Hey guys, today I have a very short assignment for you. You're going to watch this video, and as you watch the video, questions will pop up. You just need to answer them and move on. I want to make sure that you guys are understanding the nuanced differences between manslaughter in the second, manslaughter in the first, murder in the second, and murder in the first, because I'm seeing some mistakes pop up time and time again on some people's work. So I want to make sure that you guys are getting the aggravating factors that distinguish each one of these crimes. So to do that, we're going to go through assignment 3 and assignment 4, which I've graded and returned to you guys. So the first case that I want to look at was this case on Long Island of Martin Heidgen. So this guy was 3 times the legal limit of blood alcohol content, driving the wrong way for several miles on the Meadowbrook Parkway, and wind up killing 2 people. So the question is, should he be charged with manslaughter in the second degree, which is right here on your screen, recklessly causing the death of another person, or should that be elevated to murder in the second degree, right over here, subsection 2, with a depraved indifference to human life? So these kind of were the 2 options that had to be considered. Was this going to be murder because of depraved indifference, or manslaughter because what he did was reckless? So the question that has to be answered is his actions indicative of a reckless mindset or a depraved indifference to human life? Now, a few of you said that his actions were reckless because he was driving drunk. He didn't have a disregard for the lives of others. He just didn't know what he was doing because he was so drunk. Others of you argued that because he was so drunk, he didn't care whether he killed someone else or not. He had a lack of concern for the well-being of others and engaged in such reckless acts that the deaths of others were pretty much inevitable. Now, I think the fact that a 7-year-old girl was decapitated definitely adds an aggravating factor to this. Maybe his mindset wasn't to kill a young girl, but because that's what happened and in such a gruesome manner, that's definitely going to color the way a jury or a judge looks at this case. In fact, he was sentenced for murder in the second degree. He tried to appeal, and his argument was he was so intoxicated that he couldn't have possibly had a depraved indifference to human life. Because to have a depraved indifference, you have to not care about the well-being of others or the lives of others. And he was arguing that he was so drunk that he couldn't even have that type of mindset because he didn't know what was going on. Well, a judge rejected his argument, and he is still spending time in jail for depraved indifference murder. Okay, now I want to take a look at home assignment 4, where you guys had 3 cases to look at and decide if they're murder or manslaughter and what degree. So the first case is a woman in Louisiana was using methamphetamine or crystal meth when she was breastfeeding. She had tested positive for marijuana and also for methamphetamine. Now, we have to also consider that previously she had tested positive for drugs, and doctors had told her how dangerous it was to use drugs while pregnant, and also had told her not to breastfeed while she was under the influence of these drugs. So now she was actually charged with murder. However, I think ultimately what is probably going to happen is that she will probably be found guilty of manslaughter in the second degree, recklessly causing the death of another person, in this case her child. There is a chance that she could be prosecuted for murder in the second degree because of a depraved indifference. So what you have to ask yourself is, a woman who's addicted to drugs, uses them, breastfeeds her child, and the child dies. Is that reckless? Or does that indicate a wicked, inhuman state of mind where she doesn't care if someone else lives or dies? My personal perspective is that it is probably going to be manslaughter, because this seems to me, again, you could have a different opinion and that's fine. it seems to me that her actions were more reckless than depraved indifferent. After all, if she really didn't care if her daughter lived or died, why would she bother breastfeeding her in the first place or trying to take care of her? The fact that she was trying to feed her child but did so under the influence of drugs would tell me that she did care about the child, but she was willing to take the risk to do the drugs and disregard her concern for her child. But I don't believe it's a depraved indifference. But again, people might disagree, and depending on the lawyers and the fact that she previously tested positive for methamphetamine, and her first child was actually born with methamphetamine in her body, in her system. So the child came out showing trace amounts of drugs in her system. That could hurt her case, and she might wind up getting convicted of murder in a second degree. All right, case 2. Some of you mixed up who the attacker and who the homeowner were, but in this case, the homeowner was Kevin Bickford, and this guy Anson Hurley showed up at his house. Mr. Hurley forced himself into Bickford's home, which many of you then pointed out Bickford could use physical force to get him out of the house, right? He does not have to retreat. Castle doctrine. He's in his own home. But this started a fist fight, and Anson Hurley, the man who showed up at Bickford's home and tried to force his way in, he beat the homeowner Bickford to death. Now, this most likely is going to be, sorry, I'm just looking for the law code, is going to be a case of manslaughter in the first degree, subdivision 1. With intent to cause serious physical injury to another person, he causes the death of such person. This is not a reckless act because he showed up at his home drunk and tried to force his way in. That's not reckless. That's intentional. He tried to get into the man's home, and then he punched him in the face repeatedly. That's intentional. That's not reckless. However, what was unintentional was the death, right? Punching the man in the head, apparently that was intentional, but the man's death was unintentional, which is why this is probably going to be a manslaughter conviction. He was charged with manslaughter, and he will probably get convicted because he tried to force his way into another man's home, and he beat that man to death by punching him in the head. However, if we look at the details, he then attempted to do CPR on the man, Bickford, after he was dead. So this again tells us about his mindset, that his intent, maybe wasn't to kill, he just wanted to hurt him, and he was kind of shocked at what happened. But again, since he was drunk, it's hard for us to really ascertain what was going through his head. But this is probably going to be a manslaughter charge under subdivision 1, right? Intent to cause serious injury that causes death. All right, this third case is a heavy one. So you have this guy, Martinez Perez, who strangled his wife twice and then proceeded to have sex with her corpse. Very, very disturbing. Obviously, the man is mentally disturbed. But the question you have to ask yourself in this case is, was his mindset one of which was acting under extreme emotional disturbance? Because if he was acting under extreme emotional disturbance, if you take a look at murder in the second degree, it says that it is a defense that the defendant acted under extreme emotional disturbance, right? So if someone kills someone else intentionally, but does so because they have lost control because of extreme emotional disturbance, they almost don't know what they're doing and they don't have control, then it is manslaughter in the first degree, right? So that is a defense to murder. That's why it's listed here, that it bounces the charge back to manslaughter in the first degree because the person acted under extreme emotional disturbance. So if we look at the facts, they had a week-long fight because his wife told him that she wanted to get a divorce. He went through her phone the night of the killing and found text messages to another man saying that she was single and could sleep with who she wanted. Apparently the two had a long fight in the kitchen, and then he strangled her for roughly 2 minutes, then paused and strangled her again for another minute nearly until she lost consciousness, or while she was unconscious. So he strangled her, She lost consciousness, and then he strangled her again for another minute beyond that, and then he proceeded to have sex with her corpse. Okay, it's a lot to take in here. One last thing to consider. Perez, when the police asked Perez if he intended to kill her, he said he knew what he was doing, but he couldn't stop. Now, you could interpret this one of two ways. You could interpret it as, well, he couldn't control himself, so clearly he acted under an extreme emotional disturbance, for which there was a reasonable explanation as to why he would be that disturbed. The guy's wife was going to leave him. She had text messages to another man. Is that disturbing? Sure. Is that disturbing enough where he would lose total control, strangle her till she was unconscious, then continue to strangle her for another minute, then proceed to have sex with her? Or is this someone who intentionally killed his wife? Now, this is probably not going to be murder in the first degree. And the reason is because, again, if you watch my other video, there are specific aggravating factors that need to be present for murder in the first degree. And even though this guy proceeded to have sex with her corpse after he killed her, that would not constitute murder in the first degree in New York. In Colorado, where this happened, it might. But in New York, it would not be enough to elevate this. This would be a murder in the second degree charge in New York, unless you feel he acted under extreme emotional disturbance, in which case it would be manslaughter in the first degree. Now, just so you guys know, the way the case actually panned out, he was convicted of murder in the first degree under Colorado law. In New York law, it would be murder in the second degree. But the judge did not buy that he didn't know what he was doing or that he lost control. The judge felt that this guy knew he was killing his wife and then proceeded to do so. Now, again, your opinion might be different, but most of you did feel that this was murder because he had plenty of time to understand what he was doing. All right, guys, I wanted to go over these cases with you to clear up some points about the law to help you with your article deconstructions. So please feel free to email me any questions you have about your article deconstructions so I can help you. They are due by Sunday night, midnight. Alrighty? Take care, guys. Stay in, stay safe.